Hello, Honors Algebra 2, and welcome to Lesson 7.2, the Quadratic Formula. I know some of you have been like, when is that formula going to come into play? And that time is now. So our central question, how do you solve quadratic equations? Through the use of the quadratic formula. Those that don't know the quadratic formula, yes, there are videos and stuff online that have fancy little jingles. But you can look those up at your own time. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b. Okay, but wait, there's more. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, something like that, I suppose. Just this side over the 2a. Sorry about that. Okay, and all those coefficients, or those a, b's, and c's, they all come from the standard form of a quadratic expression. The key thing is it must be set equal to 0. So you must have it set equal to 0. Otherwise, a, b, and c always goes with that. C is always by itself. B is always the term with the single x. And a is always the term with the x squared. From there, it's just plugging things in. There's a little curveball here or there. So we're just going to get on into it and use our quadratic formula to solve these. I will recommend which way to solve. I know it's confusing. Use this or use completing the square. But for our sake, let's just identify our a, which is 5, b is negative 9, and c is negative 126. Okay, quadratic formula. So, alrighty, negative b. So since b is negative 9, it's like negative 9 plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay, you can of course skip any intermediate steps that you'd like. I know that opposite of negative 9 is just positive 9, so x equals 9 plus or minus square root. Here's the big thing. I would do all of this in the calculator before taking the square root. Okay, so just take the time, remember parentheses and everything like that. But anyway, negative 9 squared, because I see students make mistakes at this point, and they're just silly mistakes. So please don't do that. Square root of 2601 all over 10. Now, you may or may not know, square root of 2601 is a perfect square. It actually is. The square root of 2601 is 51. Otherwise, you'll try and break it up. But what we have is 9 plus or minus 51 all over 10. Similar to when we completed the square, that means we have two different solutions here. Okay? We have the option of 9 plus 51 over 10, or 9 minus 51 over 10. So you split into two problems here, and that's only if it comes out to be a nice integer for us. Make sure you do the 9 plus 51 first, so 60 over 10 means that x equals 6. 9 minus 51 is negative 42 over 10, which simplifies to negative 21 over 5. Okay, so two solutions. Generally for these ones, again, they will work out. I won't require you to check for extraneous at this step. So that's the idea. Plug them all in. If you do get a nice number here, that's a nice number, then you can break it up into two problems and write your answer like that. Okay? Another example. So this one here, number 2, first step, we got to set it equal to 0. So we're going to move that over by adding the 7. Then what do we have? 2x squared minus 50 is equal to 0. Now, the only thing here is we have an a value. B is missing. There is no bx. So b is 0, and c is negative 50. Even with all that, You don't have to, but if you want to think of it, that means we have negative 0, which is really 0, plus or minus square root of 0 squared minus 4 times a times c. Okay, now it is again all over 2a. Don't forget that, Mr. Dvorsky. All over 4. You will keep the plus or minus. Now, even, I know it might be silly, I mean, type that part into your calculator, 0 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 50, and you get 400, okay? Plus or minus 400 all over 4. That just means x is equal to plus or minus 20 over 4. And again, we have two different options. That means it's either positive 20 over 4 or negative 20 over 4, which means x equals 5, x equals negative 5. Okay, two solutions, those there. B is equal to 0, still do the same old thing, so not too bad. Another type of example. So those two, pretty straightforward. Here, it looks a little different as for our solution. First step, got to set it equal to 0, so let's add 12. So p squared minus 10p plus 8 is equal to 0. A is 1, b is negative 10, so 10 plus or minus square root negative 10 squared minus 4 AC all over 2, which is 2 times 1. Let's see what ends up happening. So 10 plus or minus square root negative 10 squared, so 100 minus 4 times 1 times 8 is 68 all over 2. Now, here is good old breaking up square roots back into play. Square root of 68, so we're going to try and break that up. What that can be broken up into, I believe, is 9. Nope, 68 by 4. Yeah, 4, okay. This is really square root of 4 times square root of 17. Okay, so 10 plus or minus 2 roots of 17 all over 2. And you should clean it up as much as you can, so we can divide 10 by 2 and also this by 2. Have to be able to do it to both. So our solution is then 5 plus or minus root of 17. That's what x equals. You can leave it like that. You don't need to split it up into two separate ones because this is an irrational number. You can leave it like that there. Okay, so those are irrational roots. Quadratic, solving, rational, irrational roots. Let's check out this one. Same process. Hey, we're already equal to 0. That makes us happy. So negative b, 5 plus or minus square root b squared. I'm just going to write 25. Why not? It's always going to be positive because if you square a negative, it'll always be positive. Minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times 4. Let's see where this takes us. 5 plus or minus square root. I'm going to do all this in my calculator. 25 minus 4, 5, oh boy, negative 55. What? All over 8. Don't let that scare you. Now, using what we learned last chapter, you know how to break up square roots of negatives. It's just our good old friend I. So this is I roots of 55 all over 8. 55 doesn't break down. 8 and 5 can't divide. So that's your solution. Just an imaginary thrown in there. Because why not? Because they're fun. Okay. And last example. Okay. This time, instead of a 0 or a number, we have m. So we'll just add our like term over. Make sure you add it to the other b value. 2m squared minus 8m minus 24 is equal to 0. A is 2, B is -8, so 8 plus or minus 64 minus 4 all over 2A, 8 plus or minus square root. Let's do all that in the calculator. 64 minus 4 times 2, 24, 256 all over 4. 256 is a perfect square. 16, I believe. Square root 256. Hey, yeah. So, whoa, sorry about that. 8 plus or minus 16 all over 4. Since we have a nice integer, we can break it up into two problems, 8 plus 16 over 4 or 8 minus 16 over 4. Make sure you do the numerator part first. Silly stuff, but I see students make that mistake. You should know your order of operations though. X equals 6 or x equals -2. Good. That's it, guys. Quadratic equation, quadratic formula, I values in there, and that's really about it. So plugging things in, be careful, you might have to break up square roots. So watching all those was your assignment, but make sure you practice some of these extra problems. Little curveballs thrown in with imaginary numbers and such, but I believe in you. You can do it. Remember the quadratic equation, and you got this. Easy peasy. Thanks.